Can you make a baby that's too big? Like that truly is too big?
So it's 1.7. So 9% of C-sections are due to suspected big babies, but 1.7 are born, only 1.7 are born larger than 9 pounds, 15 ounces.
But there's many women that deliver babies that
Bigger
are 9 pounds. That. Yeah. Like my husband was a 10-pound baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've had a client that had an 11-pound baby vaginally, and she was small. So I'm 5'3" and she was shorter.
So it's just not adding up. Hey sister, welcome back to the Daily Momtra Podcast. I'm your host, Jessie Truelove, and today I have a special treat for any pregnant mamas or anybody looking to birth in the future and looking for information on VBAC. Today I am interviewing Meagan, who is the co-founder of the VBAC Link. We have had a couple of amazing conversations over the last couple years. The VBACLink mission is to make birth after cesarean better by helping parents prepare and build confidence in their birthing choices. I am so stoked to have Meagan on the podcast today. I hope you guys love it. Let's dive into the episode. Okay, Meagan from the VBAC is here. I'm so excited to have her. She is your VBAC guru. Meagan, can you go ahead and just introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about your education, experience, how you found your passion for this specific niche of the birth world, and your drive to co-found the VBACLink?
Yes. So as she said, my name's Meagan, and I am with the VBACLink, and kind of how I should say this whole thing got started is my own personal journey. So with my first baby, I had a C-section, and I thought that it could be an option necessarily, or an end result, because my mom had C-sections and was told that she could never have a baby vaginally. And I'm very much like my mom. I have the same build, same everything. And then I also had the same OB that actually delivered me. Oh
my gosh, wow.
Yeah.
Full circle.
Yeah. So he was my doctor. And, I told him like, hey, I don't really want a C-section. He's like, oh, you shouldn't need a C-section. You'll be fine. And I was like, oh, okay, sweet. So from that moment on, I was like, oh, I'm not going to have a C-section. Like, that's just literally how my mind went. And I was young. I wasn't really educated, honestly. I just was going in to have a baby, like
a regular mom, just like going in to do it.
Yeah, like I had my baby bump app, and it was telling me how big my baby was and what to expect, and that's about it, right? I just thought I was gonna go have a baby. So anyway, my water broke. Labor was kind of starting. Everyone's like, "Oh, the second your water breaks, you gotta go," and so I rushed in, and when I got there, I was like barely a 1. Not really progressed. I was like,
same.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, we'll give you a couple hours. I think we went into I don't even know, 11 or midnight or something. And by 3 a.m. or something like that, they were like, hey, we gotta start Pitocin. And I was like, oh, okay. So I started Pitocin, and I guess I wasn't prepared for what Pitocin was going to bring feeling wise. Right. And I was not doing very well. And so I got an epidural, had a little bit of a heart tone decel, which is super common after an epidural. So they kind of started right there, like, hey, you might need a C-section. You're not really progressed. You just had some decels. And I was like, oh, okay. But no, he told me I didn't need a C-section,
Yeah.
Anyway, and just a couple hours later, I had progressed to a 3 and 80% effaced, which to me seemed really great because I walked in at barely a 1. And they were like, no, failure to progress. Your body doesn't know how. It can't. And so we have to go back for a C-section. And I was like, oh, okay.
Ouch.
So had a C-section after kind of realized that maybe I didn't really need that C-section. And maybe what was happening was actually very common for a first-time mom with premature rupture of membranes. So anyway, I was like, okay, I want a VBAC for my second baby. I started learning about it. And long story short, I should say, I stayed with my provider, had a gut feeling at 36 or 8 weeks to change, and I didn't. And I had a repeat cesarean. He bullied my husband. He pinned him in a corner and was like, hey, she's being really dumb right now. She's putting her life at risk. And anyway, I lost all support, and I wanted to do that birth, but never got one because my husband wasn't super on board. And anyway, walked down for a second repeat cesarean, and it was healing. I watched it. It was beautiful. I watched it through a mirror. It was really cool. And really healing, even though it wasn't the birth that I desired. I I felt good about it because I felt more a part of it. I didn't hear
Right.
about the snowstorm that was happening the last time, right? And
Yeah.
anyway, my first nurse for that tiny bit of the shift, she was a doula, and something just kept like ringing in my head, like look more into it. So I'm in recovery, dark, swollen, holding a baby, googling how to become a doula,
Oh my gosh.
and it was like fire inside of me. Like
Yep.
when you're like about to get pulled over, and you can just like feel all that adrenaline.
Yeah.
That's how it felt, where I was like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, this is it. So yeah, so I became a doula and started learning more about options after cesarean for birth. And I was like, yeah, I definitely want a VBAC still. Like, I definitely want that. But I started becoming more passionate of avoiding undesired cesareans for my clients,
Hmm.
but also supporting my clients in cesareans and trying to help them have a better experience in their cesarean, because I had a not so great cesarean experience and a beautiful cesarean experience.
Same.
So I really wanted to help full circle, whether they want a
Yeah.
vaginal birth, whether they want a cesarean. And I wanted to help them know their options and feel supported, because I didn't feel supported with my
Hmm.
second. Anyway, so I went on and had a vaginal birth, and after 2 cesareans, and it was
That's
beautiful.
incredible.
It was amazing. I will seriously cherish it for the rest of my life. I'll cherish all of my births, really. And anyway, my old partner Julie, the other co-founder, she kind of called me and was like, "Hey, we should do this." And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So here we are, or here I am. She's no longer with the company, but I love her every second of the way along this whole journey. And I'm so grateful for her for bringing me into this space so I could be here. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I got certified through DONA International. The Midwives College of Utah here has an advanced doula program. So I had that. And then Julie and I wrote a course
Yeah.
on how to support people after cesarean, whether or not they want a VBAC or cesarean, right? Like helping them know their options, knowing what they're up against, and have been able to get that ICA accredited. And so we wrote our own VBAC prep course for birth parents and for birth doulas and birth workers. So
That's
that
incredible.
is where I'm at. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, and we know Julie. I say we. I know Julie too from the last time I was on their podcast, and we
Mm-hmm.
did. I mean, we've been having these conversations for years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I was I pregnant the first time that we talked? Maybe not. I think it was before I got pregnant, because
Yeah.
before I got pregnant with my
I
second,
feel
I
like you
was
were
like,
asking a lot of questions about it.
yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
I'm having a VBAC. And then once I
Yep.
got pregnant, like with our whole situation, like I ended up choosing a planned C-section because
Mm-hmm.
overall that was better for me. But I
Mm-hmm.
think I forgot that you had a VBAC after 2 cesareans, which
Yeah.
is very exciting and empowering for a lot of moms that maybe weren't in a position to try for a VBAC their second time and maybe feel
Mm-hmm.
like they're kind of out of luck. But that
Yeah.
doesn't sound like it's the case, because you are VBAC
Here I
2
am.
times, or
Mm-hmm.
VBAC after 2 cesareans. So that's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
That's great. Um, so yeah, I have a list of questions here that I know I get all the time, and I am not qualified to answer those questions. So that's why I needed to bring you in to answer all of these. So the first question I have is, who is a good candidate for a VBAC? I know that like when I went in to go talk to my OB,
Mhm.
they kind of rambled off a list of things that would make you a good candidate or make you not a good candidate. And I just want to hear it
Mhm.
straight from your mouth. Like, what do we need to know?
Yeah. So crazy enough, almost 90% of people are candidates.
Boom.
Yeah.
90%. That's a big number.
It's a huge number, but crazy enough, not everybody will even be given the option.
Yeah.
Like 10%.
Ouch.
It's pretty low. And for those who actually do go on to have a TOLAC, which is a trial of labor after cesarean, to have a VBAC, vaginal birth after cesarean, 60 to 80% of them will actually deliver vaginally.
That's
So
like really great odds.
it's really, really great odds, which is kind of mind blowing, because you hear people still say, "Oh, I can't. Oh, but I
Hmm.
can't. Oh, but I can't. Oh, but I can't." So let's talk about it, right? So obviously there's such a high number of people that qualify. You may not qualify if you have like placenta previa or accreta. They have placental issues
Hmm.
that are not resolved by 39, 40 weeks. So that is like a big one. Or like like diagnosed issues with baby, maybe the unforeseen things. Sometimes there are things that happen where babies have health issues or growth things where like organs on the outside, things like that,
Yeah.
where
So like
it's
very
really not going
rare.
to be safe. It's very rare, but
Yeah.
it's really not going to be safe for your baby to be coming out vaginally,
Coming through
right?
the vaginal canal with an organ out of their body.
Outside of
Right.
their body. And so
Yeah.
it
That
is
makes sense.
rare, but that would totally be a big disqualification. Or if
Right.
there's some major medical problem with the mom, there may be discussion of, hey, we think a cesarean would be better for you. There's a lot of things that people will say make you not a good candidate.
Let's hear
And
them.
I'm gonna kind of tell you all of them and be like, but.
Okay, yeah.
So number one is if you've had more than 2 cesareans with a low transverse incision. So there's very little study out there on VBAC after multiple cesareans after 2, like so 3, 4, 5, and up. There's very little, and if you think about it, there's very little because it's not happening. It's not being offered.
Right.
So some providers may say, oh, you've had 3 cesareans, you are not a candidate for VBAC. So maybe yes, you have a higher increased rate of complications, like uterine rupture, which is like,
and the OB is not comfortable doing that procedure.
OB is not comfortable, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean you're actually not a candidate and you have no capability of having a vaginal birth. On our podcast, we have people who have had 3, 4, 5, and we have talked to people that have 9. Now, I wouldn't necessarily like say, hey, you've had 9 C-sections, you should definitely go for a VBAC. I'm not going to say that because yes, each cesarean, you're having a small increased risk, right? And sometimes dramatic, but it is possible. So just because you've had 2 or more cesareans does not necessarily mean you're not a candidate. It just may mean you have to find the right people to give you that option and that experience. Good provider, good team, per location that supports it. So sometimes the provider supports it, but the location doesn't. So there's a lot of that. Special scars may be a disqualifier for a provider, meaning so low transverse like this is normal. But
low transverse, they won't be able to see you. So low transverse is like the horizontal bikini line.
Yep, horizontal bikini line below the belly button, right above the pubic bone.
Okay.
That's like pretty standard, right? So a special scar may be one that is like a T incision where you look down and there's like the horizontal and then it goes up the abdominal wall.
Okay.
Or a J where it's got the horizontal, but then it has like a little hook on the side or on both sides, or there's different ways that our incisions can one be like manually cut open, but then 2, sometimes if baby's kind of stuck down there and they're pulling, then things can happen where our uterus tears a little bit more and it's called a special scar. So some providers might say, nope, totally disqualified. But again, there are people out there that do choose after finding the research and finding, out what's best for their family situation. And they do go on. So, but that could be a reason why a provider may say no.
Right.
So previous rupture is definitely a contraindication of reason to go on to VBAC. Again, there are people out there, it's very small, but if you've had a previous rupture, it may not be the best idea to go on and have a vaginal birth after cesarean, especially after that rupture. Big baby is another reason why providers will say, well, your last baby was 9 pounds, you had a C-section, probably shouldn't have a vaginal birth this time because your baby's going to be too big. I'm trying to remember, I think it is 60%. I'm going to see right here, I have my notes. 65%. So American Journal of Public Health says more than 65% of women diagnosed with CPD in their earlier pregnancies go on to deliver vaginally. And I think it's 6. I have my notes. I'm going to find it. There is like a weight. Oh, it's right here. 9% of C-sections are due to suspected big babies. 9. So a big baby doesn't disqualify you for a VBAC. And there's a lot of the times where it's like 1.6 6% is actually a big baby, like an
Right.
actual big baby. So, big babies, they're gonna maybe be said you can't VBAC and you're not a good candidate, but that doesn't mean you aren't.
Yeah. Like that just like brings me back to like when I was having my first baby and
Mhm.
like I lost my midwife because I was a failure to progress and I had Pitocin and I had the epidural and had all these
Mhm.
things. I broke my water, like
Mhm.
basically everything I did not
Cascade
want.
of interventions.
Yes, and I
Mhm.
just everything was just like failing for me. And the OB came in, he was like called in and
Mhm.
he asked me to push. I had no idea how to push and I had just been in labor for 26 hours and I was so
Tired.
exhausted. Yeah, and tired. And I was like, I don't know
Mhm.
how to push. Like, what are you even asking me right
Mhm.
now? And he puts his
Mhm.
hand in there and he's like, "Oh yeah, you're never going to have a vaginal delivery." I talked about this on your
Mhm.
podcast. It was devastating.
Mhm.
I like didn't hear anything he
Mhm.
said after that. Like I left
Mhm.
my body. And
Mhm.
my baby
Yeah.
was 6 pounds. Like she wasn't a big baby. Like I made a baby that was like should have come out of my vagina. Like
Right.
I was on my back. I had an epidural. Now that I know so much about the pelvis, there are
Yeah.
positions that are a lot more helpful than laying on your
Yeah.
back with your knees pressed up against your armpits. Like there are
Yep.
about 100 other positions that can be helpful for making your
Yeah.
pelvis seem a little bit bigger. So
Yeah.
like, can you make a baby that's too big? Like that truly is too big. That's like 1.6% of babies are actually too big. Is that right?
Yeah. So I just pulled it. So it's 1.7. So 9% of C-sections are due to suspected big babies, but 1.7 are born, only 1.7 are born larger than 9 pounds, 15 ounces.
But
Only
like, but there's many women that deliver babies that are
bigger
nine
than that.
pounds. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
my husband was a 10-pound baby.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
I've had a
yeah.
client that had an 11-pound baby vaginally, and she was small. So I'm 5'3" and she was shorter than me. I don't know exactly how tall she was, but she was shorter than me.
So it's just not adding up.
Just doesn't add up.
It
Right.
just doesn't add
And
up.
there's so the thing is CPD. So
CPD, can you?
CPD is small pelvis,
Oh, okay.
right? So I always say it's cephalic, but I don't actually know if that's the right way to say it.
These
Pelvic
words.
disproportion. It might be I don't know. Cephalic is what I call it.
Small pelvis, we got
And
you.
small pelvis is actually extremely hard to diagnose, and
Okay.
it's given all the time,
Yeah.
all the time. So with my first, I was never told. I was told failure to progress,
Yeah.
and fetal heart tones that was like hours and hours and hours ago. And other than that, she was fine.
Same. Yeah.
But on my op report, I had CPD.
So
Mhm.
why I just like it hello, informed consent. Like, can we know what we're being given? I had no idea like the negative effects of Pitocin could have actually
Mhm.
impacted the baby's heart rate dropping. Like,
Oh
and
yeah,
but are you like I had a uterine infection from them checking me so many
so
times. I had
many
a fever
times.
of
Yeah.
103 like during
Mm,
my delivery. And I like it was like I just
yeah.
didn't know because I wasn't given the time of day, you know? Um,
Yeah.
and like for you being written on your thing that you had a small pelvis, you never heard that one time. So like even if you're trying
No.
to make sense of what happened to you really can't because you're not given all the information. You're like, really what
Right.
happened here?
Yeah.
Because then you can't make educated decisions going forward because you don't have all
Mhm.
the information. And like, why
Right.
not? Like why? It's like they're
I
hiding it from
know.
you. Like they
It
just are hiding it from you.
Oh, it was really infuriating when I wanted to go for my VBAC after 2 C-section, and I went and I requested my op reports, which is something I would suggest everybody do.
There we go.
Everybody,
Yes.
no matter if you want to repeat cesarean, no matter if you want to VBAC, no matter if you even never have children again, it's really good to know what is in your op report.
Mhm.
Because again, I wouldn't have known that. The funny
Mhm.
thing is my second C-section, they told me that. They're like, "Oh, that's right. You will never get a baby out of your pelvis."
Mhm.
They told me that too. And I was
Ugh.
like, "What?
It's
What?"
just like devastating.
Yeah.
It's like such a like you're talking to a real human here. Like
Yeah.
there's a whole human behind this client name, this inpatient, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. So, and then like, if I go down this list, right? Okay. So the other one is like baby not being head down, breech, which
Mhm.
is a whole nother subject of and sad story of breech going away, right? And breech is just another variation of normal, and it's going away. So if baby's breech, they're just like, oh, C-section, right? Or if they
Mhm.
can't turn up C-section. But yeah, like those are reasons why that people would say that you can't be back, or because what you said, like you have this and this and this and this, and none of that worked. So your previous cesarean was failure to progress. So you're unlikely to have a vaginal birth this time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like that's another reason why people would actually say you're not a good candidate because of your previous reason.
Right.
So yeah, there are reasons truly, like, so I mentioned, baby issue, health, maybe pelvis issue where say a woman fell off of a horse and shattered her pelvis.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Fused together.
Yeah.
That might be a good reason for a cesarean because
there's a lot of trauma that happens.
Yes. I know someone, I know someone that had some serious back issues, like serious back issues. And she couldn't.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because her pelvis, it wasn't because her baby wasn't too big or her cervix didn't work. It was because she was unable to even move. Really.
Yeah.
She was very restricted. And so she decided that was the best choice for her. So yeah, those are some of the reasons why. And then kind of getting into that pelvis, it's really infuriating to me. Really infuriating because one, it is so hard to actually diagnose and it's given way too much. 3, people believe it. That's what gets to me is that it is sold and planted and then like locked in there in our soul that we believe that we cannot have a vaginal birth because our pelvis truly cannot let a baby out.
Yeah. And then you hold that. I mean, you carry that, especially moms are so vulnerable. Like we're so vulnerable that when we have our first baby and then to start to kick off this whole thing with being labeled a failure to anything and that your uterus and that your cervix doesn't know what it's doing. And you're like, well, damn, this is not a good start to this journey. Like I don't already know what the heck I'm doing. And now like I've got medical records to prove that, it's like all these things that just layer on. Your words carry so much weight.
Yeah. It makes us lose confidence in ourselves and our ability. And that's, I made a post the other day on the word failure. Like there is no failure in birth. None. There's no failure. Like if you want this and you get an epidural, that doesn't mean you failed. Doesn't mean you gave up. If you want this, you have a C-section, doesn't mean you failed. If you decide a C-section from the beginning, doesn't mean you failed or took the easy way out either.
Yeah, like, I hate that. Yeah,
I hate it all. It makes me mad.
Yeah, and we just need more support for moms. Like you just don't know their situation. Like you see somebody that like I got so much shame from a birth doula about choosing a repeat C-section. She was like, you think that you're above laboring. You think that you like, you're too good to go into labor. I'm like, lady, like I tried that. And what's even like, I tried going into labor and like, it didn't work for me. And I chose my planned C-section for so many reasons. My mom was out of the state. It does not matter. No. What does matter is that there's birth people out there that bring their own biases and judgments to a place that clearly cannot have any judgment from any outside, because it is the mom's experience and the baby's experience and the family. Like the fact that your OB trapped your husband, like he has no idea what you're feeling, your husband, like actually believing that you can do this and feeling like, okay, I have this power, I've done the education, like I know. And then for him to get trapped and then for him to bring that, he's just scared, and uninformed as well, like that's just so many of us, we can't make educated decisions if we don't have all the information. And then we just believe the fear that's like pushed on us because we don't want anything bad to happen to our wife. We don't want anything bad to happen to our baby. So of course your husband is gonna be like, we need to listen to this guy. C-section. Yeah, of course.
And just like you said, like you didn't hear anything after he said what they said. I didn't feel another contraction after he said what he said and pinned my husband against me. I was like, let me just walk for another hour. I don't remember, like everything stopped.
Yeah.
My body went, and held it in tight. And I couldn't continue. And so, there's so much. And it's hard. Like a lot of the times when birth professionals or even just parents out there have these strong, they're hurtful, they don't think they're hurtful, but they're hurtful opinions and biases, and they project them on someone. Sometimes it's because they're passionate about another experience, and I get that. I love that they're passionate,
Yeah.
right? But if I were to talk to everybody on my podcast and after they talk about their CBAC, right? Cesarean birth after cesarean, and say, I cannot even believe you chose that. Why would you do that? But did you not know? You know, like
Right.
that's not okay. It's not okay. Because again, they're not me. And just like you chose a cesarean, I chose a VBAC. We chose different things. But guess what? We're still wonderful and we had wonderful births and we had great babies and great experiences. And that is okay. That is okay.
It's so okay. There's a million ways to be a good mom. And there's a
Yes.
there's a million ways to be a good mom, and we don't have to all do it the same. And there's no room for judgment when it comes to birthing babies, because there's no easy way to do it. You just got to choose your hard sometimes. Chiming in, let's talk rituals. More specific, ritual pre and postnatal vitamins. I've been taking ritual vitamins for over 4 years. You guys know I have a code for you. It's TrueLove20 to save you 20% off to try them out for yourself. It was the only prenatal I could take on an empty stomach that didn't make me feel nauseous, and it's the postnatal I've been taking since delivering my youngest. Why I love Ritual is that they have traceable ingredients. They're all non-GMO, third-party tested, vegan, and nothing artificial. Their subscriptions are easy to start and easy to cancel, and their team of scientists and nutritional experts are on a mission to turn your new healthy habit into a ritual. Shipping is always free. You can control your delivery date, cancel anytime, and there's a money-back guarantee. I love Ritual. I know you guys will too. Now let's get back to the show.
Yeah, so exactly what you're saying. Like everyone has their own right, own ability to make the best choice for them. And it is up to us as a society to support them and not question. Like I told you, it doesn't matter why you chose a cesarean. You chose one, and that was right for you, right? So I want to kind of talk a tiny bit more on that CPD as well, because sometimes we get that diagnosis or that label because we actually have a baby that's in a wonky position.
And this is for small pelvis. CPD is small pelvis again.
Yep.
So we're looping back to this.
CPD, small pelvis. Yeah. It can oftentimes reflect on what our baby is doing and how they came down. So sometimes they break your water, baby was high, baby was not quite in an ideal position, baby comes down, it's harder without fluid to rotate. We're in early labor, so we've got a higher baby and less strength of the contractions to push baby down and rotate. And then they keep getting down further into the less ideal position. We've got an OP, which is posterior baby, or an asynclitic, where baby's kind of tilting to the side. Sometimes babies come out with like little knots in their head, on their side of their head, or like little swollen spots. Or, there's tons of other positions, but a lot of the times it's a positional thing. And it's really something that we need to work through with the labor to get a baby out vaginally versus your pelvis is actually just too small or your baby's just too big.
Okay. And so that means like working through that with labor. That means like your doula's in there, like getting you into different positions, massaging the baby out. Like,
yeah. Yep. Different positions, working with rebozo, changing it up, using peanut ball. And sometimes an OB, if we've got an OP baby, which is an occiput posterior baby, meaning baby's back is against your back. So baby is coming out looking up, sunny side up. And so they don't have the normal head flexion to come under that pubic bone.
Okay.
So it's a harder way to give birth. It's not impossible, but it is harder. And there's a lot of C-sections that happen because we have a baby that's posterior, but some OBs are comfortable in actually manually rotating.
Okay.
You have to be like fully dilated, but that is something you can ask for. If you've got, back labor and you're coupling contractions and everyone's like, oh, this baby's OP, you can say, hey, when we get to that, can you help me? Can you help me get this baby out?
Okay. I have another question of who is a good candidate for a VBAC. I feel like you answered this. Is there anything else that you want to add to that question that we didn't touch on who is not a good candidate?
Yeah. So whether or not you're being told you are or not a good candidate, I think it all still comes down to following your heart, doing your research, getting educated, and having that support. Because again, like I said, there are extreme circumstances where there's a baby health issue, a mom health issue, placenta issue, actual body issue. Those are reasons. And they're valid reasons. And that is okay. It's okay.
Yeah, that resonates huge because for me, it was like mental also, like the mental like load of being stuck in the first position, like get like a repeat experience of my
Uh-huh.
first, like, trying to vaginally
Yes.
deliver was so traumatizing. And I'm like, I have another baby at home. Like, how am I going to manage the
Yeah.
load and anxiety that I had coming home, like,
Mm.
failing for my first vaginal birth and the
Uh-huh.
weight that that carried, and then having 2 babies to take care of. And,
Yeah.
it so, like, I made
I
those choices, like,
love
for
that.
multiple mental, and,
Mhm.
like, we're in a rural area, and so they did kind of
Mhm.
stick me with the uterine rupture kinda statistics
Mhm.
and kinda freaked me out a little bit like that, but also, like, the OR team is not on staff. So if I try to vaginally deliver and I have a
Mhm.
rupture, they're not there to, like, do the
Mhm.
C-section. They have to be, like, called in from the country to come in to do the
Mhm.
C-section, and, like,
Yeah.
do I really wanna risk that? Because for me at the time, choosing a VBAC before I got pregnant with my second, it was more pride. I was like, that OB
Mhm.
told me I was never going to deliver vaginally. I
Uh-huh.
will deliver vaginally. And then I
Yeah.
got pregnant and I was like, whoa, my mom is in California. I'm in Oklahoma. Who's going to watch my baby? We've never left our toddler alone with anybody. And it was just literally, we left her alone for 36 hours with my mom
Mhm.
and my sister. They had to fly in. And I was like, I can't
Mhm.
take the risk of, like, going into labor. It was during COVID. Like, Bradley couldn't
Yeah.
come in with us. It was like all these
Yeah.
things. And so moms have to make tough decisions. And, like,
Yep.
they're tough, whether somebody thinks that they're hard or not, or that you are
Mhm.
taking the easy way out. Like,
Mhm.
birthing is hard no matter how you do it, and if you have an easy way to deliver a baby, please share with the class, because
Yeah,
last time I
seriously.
checked,
No
it
easy
mixes it
way
up
out.
pretty good. Yeah.
No easy way out, no matter the method. But I love that you mentioned that, because say all of those boxes are checked. You're like, nope, this, and this. I am a great candidate.
Right.
But mentally, I don't think I want to go there. And
Yeah.
that is okay. So I love that you mentioned that.
And I love that you have, like, your courses help support moms that choose that as well, because
Mhm.
for me, I didn't even realize that there was birth people out there that were, like, so biased and so
Yeah.
hateful. I to, like,
Mhm.
receive that type of, like, public hate,
Yeah.
and they, like, reached out to companies that I was working with. They were she was literally blasting me all over the place. And I'm like, I
Ah,
literally just said I'm choosing a C-section for myself. Like, I,
yeah.
like, didn't tell everybody to do it. Like, I, like, could not
Yeah.
understand. I was like, there is so much controversy around this, and
Mhm.
now I haven't stopped talking about C-sections, like, since then, because I know it's a need. Like, people need to see that represented as well, because there are so many
Mhm.
reasons why you choose different things. But
Yeah.
for the people that, end up in either situation, I love that your courses and your offerings for people that are birth supporters get information on both of those things and how to do it in a
Yes.
very supportive and helpful way.
Yeah. Well, and
Right.
it debunks all the crazy myths out there, but it also really makes it so you can make the educated decision that's
Hmm.
best for you. And we're
Yes.
gonna go over, it is not just VBAC. It is not like this. It is both cesarean and VBAC. It's the history of cesarean. It's the history of VBAC. It's the pros and the cons of why of both. It's the contraindications, all the things, how to navigate through it, how to have a good cesarean, how to have a good VBAC, how to cope if you don't get your VBAC,
Right.
how
I
to
love that.
cope,
So important.
and how to help your family support,
Yeah.
your decisions. So yeah, it's so hard. Like my mom, she was not happy that I was going for a VBAC. In fact, I honestly kind of hid it from my family for a long time because I didn't want the repercussion of them, you know?
Yeah. No, I feel
And
that.
then when I made the decision to birth out of hospital, I was like, "Okay, really not telling them. Nope,
Yeah.
no way." Because I didn't, and my mom, when she found out, was livid.
That's
Livid.
so,
Told me some
sad.
horrible things. Horrible things. And I'm like, yeah, I need to support. I need support. So
Yeah.
whether you're a birthing parent, whether you're a birth worker, support those around you. Listen,
Yeah.
love them. Don't
Yeah.
feed your opinion. They don't want your opinion. They just need
Hmm.
your love.
Right. Are you gonna make me cry? Okay. Are you talking to me? Okay.
Right.
Okay, next question. Okay. How can you best prepare for a VBAC? Is it
Mm,
mindset? Is it physical? Is it positions? Like, we all know that the
mm.
Pinterest worthy nursery is not what we all need. Like, what do we need if we
Yes.
want to have a VBAC?
Yeah. So, how to prep? There are many ways. Sometimes the direction of how you prep is going to differ depending on like what you are and what you need and who you are, right? So, um, sometimes it is actually processing your past births, like actually
Huge.
processing
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are like, I don't need to necessarily process first. I need to find that supportive provider. I need to find that supportive team. I need to find that doula. I need to talk to my husband or my birth partner, like, so I'm not going to tell these off in like any particular order, but here are some ways that you can prepare mentally processing and really processing, not just being like, okay, I failed. Well, I'm not going to fail again. It's like really breaking it down, peeling it out like an onion. Like there are many layers of processing, and some of them are kind of superficial and you're like, oh, well, that happened, but it really wasn't that big but of a deal. But then some of it's like a really, really big deal, right? So you have to peel those off and process them. Also, you want to process with your birth partner,
Mm-hmm.
because your birthing partner likely has processing to do as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can process together, you're going to be stronger together, and they're going to really understand your why.
Yeah.
Your why behind whatever you decide. So processing, feeling confident after you process, and feeling confident comes with education. Really prepping, knowing the actual risks, having that supportive provider, not a supportive provider that, or you say, I should say, here I am with quotes, right? Air quotes. A supportive provider says, oh, you can try. A supportive provider is like, okay, I see why you've had a cesarean, and it's good to know, but this is what we're going to do differently this time to help you get this feedback, and want your VBAC just as much as you do, and really support it and feel comfortable. You mentioned earlier, like some providers don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And they'll say, oh, you could go. Yeah, sure. It's fine. But like, don't truly feel comfortable with everything. So hiring a doula, physically, like staying active, good nutrition. I mean, but staying active and good nutrition, that is a big deal for anyone having a baby. Finding a good supportive provider is good for anyone having a baby. Processing previous traumas, right? It's like, it's so talked about for VBAC, but this is really like everything.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Everything.
trauma is in the eye of the beholder, and one thing
Yes.
that's traumatic for some like is not traumatic for others, and
Right.
that's why it's hard to like, you don't always have to relate to somebody's trauma. You just, and like you said, you just have to listen and just validate what they're experiencing, because trauma can also be something that is something from our childhood, like or something
Yes.
else we experience has nothing to do with birthing. And your husband or your birth partner or your friends or your other mom friends might not understand, or they don't need to justify like
Yeah.
why your trauma is trauma. And do you have any tips on like how to start? I know, like specifically for birth trauma, like how to start processing that. Is that writing out your
Yes.
birth story? Is that, what does that look
Mhm.
like?
Yes. So if you've had a previous cesarean, I mentioned earlier getting your op reports
Yeah.
and learning what was documented about you. Warning, it can be very triggering. It can.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the start of letting it out, right? But yes, so getting your op reports, or knowing what they said. But yes, writing your birth story is a first step, and it's important to try and write down exactly how you remember it, exactly, and even in parentheses what you thought. If you remember, I was thinking this or whatever. So writing it down, reading it silently, reading it aloud, and then having someone else read it to you. It's weird,
Yeah.
but having all of these different ways of hearing your story, you're going to pick things and you're going to learn what you need to process. And so, in all of these steps, write down what stood out to you, and then that's what we need to process.
Yeah.
So, whether we need to talk to like professional help, therapists, which there are a lot of birth trauma therapists, that is a start. Whether it be talking to your significant other, whether it be talking to your best friend that can totally relate and is just going to be there to listen, those are really good ways. And then there's another way that you could do is actually find the information. So sometimes it's a situation that's happened to you, and sometimes it's something that was said to you. Like for me, with my second cesarean, I was told it's a good thing you didn't have a VBAC. You would have ruptured for sure.
Ouch. Gosh.
Yeah.
Oh
Really
my
said that.
gosh.
So how do
Yeah.
you think? So I thought I processed this even before I VBAC with my third, but it still came up in my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, he said it was gonna rupture. Like it was in my head, right?
Of course.
So it's really hard to. It's sometimes really hard to let it go, but try your hardest. And so writing it down, finding the facts and the information, and burning it, like writing it down, and watching it burn and then filling that with a positive affirmation.
Okay.
So I for sure would have ruptured. I'm burning it. I know the rupture signs. I'm going to watch out for them. And then I'm going to keep going. If I don't see those, if I do see those, I'm going to be okay with that. I'm going to accept this journey and I'm going to say something. Whatever, right? Or my body cannot dilate. Well, it is really rare for bodies not to dilate. This is the reason why I didn't dilate last time, right? Like it just is filling with positive affirmation. So those would be some of the ways that you can, but I think processing and learning, I love the writing it down, reading it, saying it out loud, and then hearing it.
It's excellent advice. And I've never had somebody read my birth story, but I'm sure like listening to my husband read the birth story that I wrote, I'm sure that would bring me to complete tears because, he has which I haven't written his birth story. He didn't write his birth story from our first experience, but it was a lot for us. And I'm sure that he would feel some type of way too reading my birth story. So that's great advice. I love the idea of and that's what I've taken on for myself too. Writing my birth story, I've done that for both my kids, and being able to digest what happened and reprocess whatever is triggering in those experiences and giving it new meaning and giving it purpose. I don't think that I'd be doing what I'm doing now if I didn't have a traumatic birth experience with my first.
Same. I mean, I was going to become a labor and delivery nurse. Like I loved birth. Like I had a passion for babies. But I don't think I would be here right now.
What a purpose.
VBAC.
What purpose, what an immense purpose that you've been given due to this traumatic thing. It was truly traumatic and you've been able to reprocess it. And now you're putting out such valuable information. I love that. And I feel like, that can come from any traumatic experience, if you're willing to go back there, which can be very hard.
And another thing I want to point out is it's okay to take time.
Oh yeah. There's no timeline. There's no timeline.
No timeline. And everyone's going to be different. And so don't expect to just jump right back into it. And then some people are going to, and that's okay too.
When you said you were looking up your birth doula, as you're holding your new baby. So my husband recorded my second C-section on the phone. Literally as soon as we got back to the room, I watched it because they wouldn't let me have a clear drape. And so I'm holding the baby and I'm watching them cut into my belly, and watching. I'm like, this is literally the coolest thing I'm ever watching in my entire life because I missed it with my first.
Yes.
And now I just love C-sections and I love moms and birthing and all the things, and vaginal delivery isn't something that I've experienced, but being able to be a part of my C-section because my husband got to videotape it and they were so welcoming about it, letting him videotape
which is
everything.
Amazing.
It was it was such a gift to be able to watch it. He's like, I cannot believe you're watching that right now. I'm like, you have no idea how exciting this is for me. And I loved watching
I wish that we could have recorded. We have some pictures, but I wish we could have recorded it, but watching it live in the mirror, it was I think that was one of the biggest things that was so healing for me. Because I felt a part of my birth. I truly felt a part of my birth.
Totally resonate with that. Okay. How long is recommended to wait between pregnancies to have a VBAC? This is a question that was sent in also.
Yeah. So, there are some different studies on that. And they're kind of still small studies. So some providers will say 18 months, some will say 24, and some will say there's no different after 6 months. But typically 18-ish months is good to allow your body to heal and everything to recover and your incision to be stronger, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and this is even just in general,
pregnancy in general,
go through a lot. Our bodies go through a lot, but now we have this added incision. And so, anywhere between 18 to 24 months. But again, it's super personal preference. We have a blog all about length between cesareans with some of those studies as well. So I can send that over to you.
Send me that link and I'll put that in the show notes too, because I know there's moms that are getting pregnant before. I have so many people that reach out and they're like, I'm pregnant. I have a 10-month-old at home. What do I do? I'm like, you're going to do it, girl. It's still going to be okay. You're still going to be okay. And there's all these guidelines and recommendations are like just recommendations. Like things happen, you know,
Exactly.
or
Exactly.
you
They're
want them
just
to happen.
recommendations.
Yeah, it's just like everybody is different. And like you said, also the studies are limited on so many of these topics. It's hard to make hard rules. There's always an exception, and so
It is.
that's
And
something to keep in mind.
yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, and one provider will say one thing and another provider will say the other. And so if it's varying that much, it
Mhm.
just goes to show you like do what's best for you,
Yeah.
find the research and get the knowledge, but then
Mhm.
ultimately like pick what's best for you.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think like finding the right support is like with anything, like do your research on
sure.
the people that are going to be supporting you, because my birth team with my first and my birth team with my second were like from different planets. Like
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
second team would literally, they were like angels. I was like, where have you guys been? Like this is,
Mhm.
it was incredible. And
Yeah.
it's so incredibly healing. And my first, I was like, you guys just put so much birth trauma into my mind and my heart and my soul. And like, this is, it's so different, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, just something to keep in mind is studies are, you can honestly find studies that support both sides on like whatever topic. That's the other
Absolutely.
thing is like, just don't listen to one, like look at all of the information, make
Mhm.
an educated decision. And then also you have your
Right.
own input because of your experiences and your situation and
Your
like all the things.
intuition.
Yeah, your
Yeah.
intuition.
Yeah, which is why the course was created. Is here it all is because also when I was preparing, it was really hard to debunk all the
Oh
different
yeah.
stuff. So we wanted to create this course where it's just all in one place.
Yeah.
Here they are. It's very evidence-based. I mean, it's all right there together. And
It's the
so that's
Wild West out
exactly
there.
why.
It's hard to like go through all the information. It is
Oh, it's tough.
literally the wild, wild west on the internet,
It's
on social media
really
with,
hard.
yeah. So
Mhm.
I appreciate the collection of evidence-based support, and then moms can make their
Yeah.
own choices. And then,
Yep.
you know, whatever happens, like you're supported in the ways that you need. And I think that's so important. But when you're choosing a provider, what
Yes.
types of questions should moms be asking their OBs? Like, how do you know, like, okay, this probably isn't the provider for me. I don't really feel supported. And because you also mentioned, like, if somebody says, oh, yeah, we can go ahead and try that, you can try that. And then in the back of their mind, they know they get to make the call. Like, you're going to have a C-section anyways. I'm going to let you labor for 5 hours and then we're having a C-section. So, like, what are like your top questions to ask your OB? And then, like, what are the red flags? Like, maybe I need to go see somebody else.
Yeah. Great question.
Loaded
So,
question.
very loaded question. So, I'll try not to take up too long. Okay, so some questions. First of all, I want to point out one thing right away is never ask a yes or no question. Never. Don't
All
say,
right.
do you support VBAC?
Mhm.
Anyone can say yes.
Yeah.
They can also say no, of
Mhm.
course, but anyone can say yes. Don't ever say, do you allow VBAC? Yes or no. It's always open ended questions. What are your thoughts about VBAC? About VBAC? About VBAC? What are your thoughts? What have you seen?
Mhm.
How do you support VBAC? Right. So you want to really dig into them, like make them give you a full answer.
Yeah.
Um, so what risks do I have for VBAC? What risks do I have for repeat cesarean? So they're literally starting to, we're opening the conversation, right?
Right.
If
Yeah.
they say there are all these risks for VBAC and there are no risks for cesarean, that's a big problem right there. Because there are risks for cesarean and there are
100%.
risks for VBAC.
Right.
And those can be different risks, but there are risks for both. So really having a discussion. So some of those questions are going to be ones that are going to help you get an idea if your provider is going to be supportive. Some other questions are, do you induce VBAC? Now this is going to be a yes or no question followed with a more elaborate
Okay.
question. So yes, okay, you do. How do you? How do you induce VBAC? You don't? Okay, well, evidence shows that induction is totally safe for VBAC, more than likely, depending on your situation. So why don't you? Why don't you induce for VBAC? And if you're not, are you comfortable or not? So those could be reasons to maybe not go with that provider or switch for that provider because if they're not following evidence-based care, that could be a problem in labor.
Yeah.
So yeah, so some of those questions you could talk about third trimester. So I'm going to kind of go into actually some of those red flags because this is where these are going to go into. Um, early on, say you've chosen a provider and you're like, yeah, they checked all the boxes, they answered them really well. I'm feeling really good about this. And then early on in your pregnancy, they're going to say, hey, so we're looking at this due date. Why don't we, a week before at 39 weeks, schedule a C-section just in case?
Mm,
That's going to be a red flag.
okay.
That your provider may actually not be continuing to be on board as though they were saying in the beginning. And again, they may say, like, we don't induce and we have a scheduled cesarean, and maybe that's okay with you. That's okay too, right? So just because one provider doesn't answer all the questions that would categorize them as a VBAC supportive provider doesn't mean you can't go with that provider. You
Mm-hmm.
again have to follow your intuition in your heart.
Yeah.
And again, ask your question to yourself. How much do I want this VBAC? How much do I want to have to fight? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're in a birthing situation, you're not in a position to fight. It's really hard. So late third trimester, say you've got this provider, they've been seeming really great, and now all of a sudden they're like, okay, so next week we're going to do a growth ultrasound. We're going to see how big this baby is. That is a red flag that a provider may be changing tune, and that isn't going to be as VBAC supportive. Or saying, okay, well, we've got 2 weeks until we have to induce you because you're 39 weeks. Or you're 2 weeks out before we have to schedule a cesarean because you haven't had a baby yet, those types of things. Or if at 38, 39 weeks, they're checking you and they're like, well, you haven't progressed. They're probably not going to because you didn't last time. So you're probably not going to be able to have a baby.
Okay. So yeah, what if you're 40 weeks and I mean, can you be like too late? Like, is that like a real reason for a cesarean? I feel like
Mm,
babies like come when they're ready. Like we don't actually know like
we
when
don't.
babies were conceived, like to the days most of the time. And like sizes are like
Mhm.
general when they're looking at ultrasounds, it could be a week off.
Well, and
That's like
some,
my thoughts. Like those are
yep,
my personal thoughts. I'm like, I
yep.
feel like some, they just I don't know. I don't know. Like,
Well, and some bodies carry longer. Some
yeah.
some babies, some bodies carry until 41 weeks, right? Like I have a client right now. She's not a previous cesarean, but her first baby was delivered or she gave birth at 38 weeks. She's now 41 at 5,
Yeah.
and still going.
Yeah.
So yeah. So statistics show that stillbirth chances raise after 42 weeks, and there are reasons to be concerned after 42 weeks that baby's still inside and we may want to induce, right?
Okay.
So can you go over 40 weeks? Yeah, happens all
Hmm.
the time. Happens all
Yeah.
the time. But a lot of the times providers that aren't supportive won't allow that.
Right.
So that's something to watch for. Talking about the size of your baby. Oh, you're looking pretty big. You might have
Yeah.
a big baby. We should probably just schedule a C-section. And just overall expressing doubt in you.
Right.
That
Yeah.
those are going to be red flags that you may not be with the provider you thought you were with.
Hmm.
And I want to say this, and it sounds scary, sounds really scary, but you can change your provider at any time.
Yeah,
You can
that is it
in
it
labor.
could sound scary, but it also sounds really empowering. I feel like we don't know that we can say, "I only want one person to come in my room. I wanna change a
Mhm.
nurse. I wanna change my"
Advocating.
you can advocate for yourself
Yep.
whenever you want.
Yeah.
That was my
Yeah.
last
I,
question, was about mamas advocating for themselves and like we talked about in the beginning, we both got a bunch of things that we didn't really want
right.
and maybe we didn't need, but we didn't know. And now we
Mhm.
know. And so what can we do now? And I feel like that's my last question for you is, and I feel like it's right in tune with what we're talking about is advocating for yourself. What control do you have? Um,
Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah. So how much can a birthing person say? Like
Hmm.
how much do they have to say? They all of it.
Yeah.
All of it. They can say no. They can say, I want to try something else. You
Hmm.
can advocate and you can refuse anything that you don't want or that doesn't resonate with you. It's hard to do
Yeah.
because
So
you're
much pressure in
vulnerable. You're
hospitals. Yes.
vulnerable. And we talk about, advocating for ourselves, and it is hard to advocate for yourself. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important to have that supportive team and that
Yeah.
doula and having your birth partner on board because they can help advocate for you. But you have all the say. So if there's something you don't want, it's okay to say no. If at 37, 38 weeks, you're finding this provider's maybe not in line with your desires, it's okay to change. You don't even have to say, you're fired, I'm leaving. You can just go find that other provider, send a request to get your medical records, and call the relationship good for what it was. And now
Yeah.
you're moving on.
Yeah.
These providers, um, they are not going to hold the experience that you're going to hold for the rest of your life.
Exactly. And they're working for you. Like we forget
They're
that.
Yes, they're working for us. And it is okay to say no. It is okay to say, you know what? I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but I want to know the pros and the cons to all of it. I want to know my alternatives. Let's have a conversation about this. Don't let someone tell you what you have to do. Be a part of your birth. Be a part of your birth.
Yeah.
Yeah, like one of the biggest things for me was I felt like birth was happening to me and
Yeah.
I wasn't being a part of my experience with my first, and I didn't like that. Like
That
things were
hits home. That hits
yeah,
home.
they were doing things without even telling me they were doing things. There was
Yeah.
no informed consent. They were just doing it, saying, we have to do this. We have to do this. And I didn't go to medical school.
Right.
I
Yeah.
didn't know. I said,
It's
okay, I
so
guess.
medical. Birthing has become so medical. It
And
is. It's like,
it's not a
yeah.
medical event, but
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be a medical event.
Right.
And a cesarean is medical, yes,
Yeah.
but it can still be a positive, uplifting experience, and it can be
Oh,
still be
yeah.
gentle. You can
Yeah.
still have so many things that you would have in a vaginal birth in a cesarean.
Yeah.
So yeah. You could totally advocate for yourself.
Yeah. And I think that, just with the more knowledge and education and information you have, the more
Exactly.
empowered you feel to make these calls.
Yeah.
And then you feel confident in those choices and
Yep.
you can make more confident choices moving forward. And I think that's just
Mhm.
like the whole takeaway here is like get educated so you can make informed
Get
decisions for
educated.
yourself and advocate for yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Your number one piece of advice you would give to your past self as a first mom. Go.
Educate.
Yeah.
I didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
I was very naive. Educating and learning more about my options. Just in a whole. Yeah.
So
Education.
like don't set up the Pinterest worthy nursery.
Yeah, and I had a Pinterest worthy nursery. I would say it was cute ladybugs, and my daughter was Ladybug. I mean, it was so cute. But like, yeah, I put so much more effort in that than I did for my big event that was going to happen. I mean,
Sure.
we prep for a wedding,
Oh
right?
yeah.
We
Oh
prep a
yeah.
lot for a wedding.
Yeah.
We invest so much time and energy, but sometimes when we're having babies, we just don't. And I
Yeah.
don't understand.
Like I had no idea how to push. How is that possible? I had an
Yeah.
epidural. I couldn't like really feel what was going on, and
Uh-huh.
then he's like pushed. I'm like, huh? Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? What do
Yeah.
you mean? Like that's like
And it's kind
OBs should be like helping women know how to do that before the big
yes.
moment, and like
Yeah.
not everybody can
Yeah.
have a doula, and so it's like figuring
Mhm.
out what information do moms really need and getting that information to them in the most
Yeah.
digestible, supportive way.
And being patient with them because
Yes.
it's your first time. You're not just gonna be like, oh yeah, I'm the best pusher in the world. It's gonna take a
Yeah.
minute. But like being guided, being coached, being loved and supported through that and being like, oh, did
Versus
you feel
being
that?
pressured and feared into things and like,
Yeah. And doubted.
yeah, and doubted.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. What is your go-to mantra to get you through hard times? It's like a mantra, but mom style.
Uh-huh. I love it. The Momtra. Just so one of the things for me is if you believe. And it was actually from Whitney Houston. I'm pretty sure it's called Believe.
Uh-huh.
And I just told myself that the whole time I was in labor. If you believe, if you believe. And then you have to believe.
Yeah.
So I love that. But like, you can do hard things and I've been given this challenge for a reason.
Yeah.
That's a hard one, but I love talking like, okay, I'm being challenged for a reason and I have to learn from this.
Yeah. And I feel like that can apply to so many things in
Yeah.
not just
In
birth,
life.
but in
Yeah.
life, in motherhood, in
Yeah.
relationships, in business, all the things. These challenges, if we can get to the other side, there's a huge reward and a lesson to be learned.
Yeah.
It's like we were talking about before we started recording. So many lessons,
Yeah.
so many
many
challenges.
lessons. Yes.
Okay, Meagan, we are coming to the end of the podcast. Where can everybody find you? What are the tools and resources that you're currently offering for parents and for birth workers also?
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
So the VBACLink.com is our website and it's VBAC. So the VBACLink.com. And we have a course for parents that are expecting and wanting to know their options, as well as birth workers. We have a certification for those birth workers. And we have a portal. So if you're looking for a VBAC certified doula, definitely head to our website because we have a lot of them all over the world, like even in different countries, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
So we have the podcast. It's called the VBACLink, and it's filled with a lot of birth stories, both VBAC and CBAC, a lot of birth professionals, chiropractors, all the things that can benefit you along the way. And you can learn. And I even suggest that for first-time parents, because learn the options, learn the reasons why cesareans are happening. So let's lower the cesarean rate for those undesired cesareans, and learn more how to avoid, the undesired things. So we have that. We have webinars, monthly webinars. We have our podcast, or not our podcast, our Instagram and our Facebook. We have a private VBAC community. It's called the VBACLink community on Facebook. We also have a CBAC community that's private. So the CBAC community, link community. So those are for parents who are wanting to be surrounded by people with like-minded desires and learn more from their experiences, and also heal from their experiences. So yeah, we have freebies, we have resources, tons of amazing things.
That's so great. Okay, I'll have to get links from you for all of those,
Yeah,
and then I'll
I'll
put those in
email
the
them
show
all to you.
notes. Perfect. And this episode is just packed with so much education and golden nuggets for moms. And I get so many DMs about these topics that I know there's going to be, and I talk a lot about C-sections.
We might have to do
VBACs.
another.
Yeah, we can definitely do another. There will be a part 2, maybe a part 3. We'll just keep this relationship going.
Go on forever.
We totally could. Meagan, thank you so much for joining me on the Daily Momtra Podcast. It's been my pleasure. It always is talking to you. And we will have to record again soon.
Yes, thank you. It was an honor.
Gosh, what a great episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Daily Momtra Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love you guys forever if you would rate, review, or share this podcast with a mama friend that may need it. And if you do choose to share on social media, make sure that you tag me so that I see it. Thank you guys so much for listening. I will see you guys soon.